It's a big pleasure for me to welcome you to this event from the Swiss Service Design Network around the idea of everyday service design. And today we have a lovely guest, Leili, who is joining us. Welcome, Leili.
Thank you for inviting Daniela, and it's an honor to be here with all of you here.
Thanks so much for accepting the invitation, Leili. So now the stage is truly yours.
Thank you so much. My academic background and the first years of my career were in architecture and interior design. Then I jumped into graphic design, and eventually, because I was passionate about writing and tourism, I worked as a content manager at a B2B tourism company. And now I am jumping here for 4 years. And as a service designer, I have experience as an in-house designer, but mostly service designer in agencies such as Lean Design and Divergent Transformation Agency, as Daniela said. But currently, I work as a freelance service designer and helping small businesses like to better understand their challenges. And where I'm not jumping, I draw doodles that is named collapses. And the body of the one is the head of the next one. And if I sit for a long time, they may take over the whole board. So I prefer to jump. Anyway, okay, I am going to share how I benefit from the service design mindset in my daily life. But I have to confess, this idea really goes back to my very first encounter with service design. Because my first experience wasn't as a designer, it was actually as a client working with a service design agency. So before I talk about the tips, I want to tell you a very short story that about how it felt to be the client of a service designer. Exactly while I was jumping here as a content manager in that tourism company, Corona pandemic hit. The tourism was dead. Until when, we didn't know. Could we continue like before? We didn't know. It was so hard to plan ahead and predict outcomes, and also so difficult to analyze what was happening or draw clear boundaries about the context and the ecosystem. So it felt like getting lost. I think that what we all have in common here is facing these kind of hard situations that not just during the corona, but in many layers of our life, in our relations, career path, personal growth, just the time that when things keep changing and everything feels unstable, full of volatility, or when the future is so unclear that we live in uncertainty, the time that when so many factors like economy, health, politics, they all are connected and everything becomes so complex and hard to analyze. And when the information conflicts and the situation turns ambiguous. These are exactly the conditions of is called a VUCA world. And in those moments, I honestly feel like a turtle in a world that moves too fast and everything is unclear. It is so stressful, isn't it? So keep this mutual experience here and let's go back to that story. In that Corona days, when our tourism company was really struggling with that VUCA situation, we reached out to a service design team for help. And you won't believe what happened next. We got a holistic view, which made it easier to find a way out of the crisis. At the same time, we were given a set of tools to make sure we didn't forget the journey that we were on. So we learned to separate assumptions from reality. And to be honest, I think that the most important thing was that the company, what truly made them feel happy when certain things happen. As part of that client team, I must confess what they did was truly valuable. So I resigned from my job and decided to become a service designer. So I'm here. So I could join the people who create that kind of value for others. But after a year of practicing service design, I found myself wishing there was someone who could do for my life what service designers do for businesses. Imagine to have someone who maps my journeys with empathy, to have someone to dig into my pains, my needs, my hopes, and helps me see where I actually fit in all these messy contexts and relationships. Seriously, if businesses can have service designers, why can't I? So I decided to hire myself as my own personal service designer to apply the service design mindset to my own life. Because at the end of the day, I just wanted to live a little bit happier. So here, I think my very first encounter with service design as a client shaped how I have applied a service design mindset in my daily life and become the client of my inner service designer. I would like to share 4 tips with you with real examples and show how they are all connected. Okay, let's jump to tip one. Tip one is about co-creation sessions and making empathy to find out more. In my experience working as a client with service designers, they ran many co-creation sessions that brought all of us in a client team closer to each other and to the issue that we had in that time. And during the session, I felt heard and understood. Later, I realized they was a facilitator guiding everything. And I hadn't even noticed that how her role or the visuals were helping us understanding the stuff. And after the session, we had new things to think about that helped us to uncover the different dimensions and perspectives of that issue. As my inner service designer, I borrowed this co-creation and empathic approach from here to explore different dimensions of mindset about an issue and draw my own co-creation map. Here how it goes. I pick a challenge. It can be personal, work, project. I let it go by asking what, why, and how to find out more dimensions about that issue. And I facilitate it by sketching more than using usuals. For example, I am in the session with myself talking about what I want from my job. I don't want my job to force me specific time and place. But by writing down these, many words come in my mind, like being my boss, working remote, hybrid, memorize and feelings of that kind of jobs. That makes me distracted. By drawing this sketch, I feel I am understood and not judged. And also, it is truly fun. This is the best facilitation when I know in self creation sessions. In my experience, just one co-creation session helps to know more about the issue and explore my next steps. This image belongs to 3 years ago, illustrates my first co-creation session with myself. I put myself in the middle because design is the human center and find out about the issue I'm struggling with around it. And then I ask more WH questions to make clarity. By visualizing my inner dialogues, I turned abstract feelings into tangible maps that I could work with, and they make my next steps. And this is also how I run creation sessions for my friends, inviting them for coffee and turning it into a session to explore the career desires. Tip two is about double diamond and iterating stuff. When working with designers as a client in that tourism company, I knew nothing about service design, okay? And this double diamond felt like an agreement between the client team and the design team. That this part here is the problem solution and where we discover and define. And here is the solution stage where we develop and deliver. And this process is iterative. I realized instead of jumping to quick fixes, service designers follow this process to define and clarify what the problem or issue is. I must confess, as a client in that time, it helped us a lot to navigate uncertainty. There is always an issue with me in my daily life. There is always an issue. So I borrowed double diamond framework as a mindset to make sure to solve the right problem before solving the problem right. I try to find out where am I with this issue that is always with me in the double diamond framework, that I am in solution part or I am asking more questions. Designers might use many tools like to state the issue, but my favorite tool that I use in my everyday life is 5 whys to make sure about my issue statement. Let me tell you an example that how this actually saved me from burnout. I had this problem and solution statement. I have to work more hours because I wasn't satisfied with my project result. The more I worked, the closer I got to burnout, and my results were still not satisfying. Here I run like a simple 5 whys to dig deeper into the real issue. That, okay, I am not satisfied with my project's results, but why I'm not satisfied? Because ideas don't feel creative. Okay, why they don't feel creative? Because I can't connect and concentrate on new ways of thinking. And why I cannot concentrate? Because my brain always feels so full and tired. And why my brain is always full, feels so full and tired? Because I never give myself the space to step away. And why I don't give myself this space? Because I keep telling myself that the only way like to do this is work more hours. It is obviously a contradiction here. Working more hours was just a solution for not being satisfied with my outcomes actually. But the real problem wasn't the hours. It was my mindset about how to improve my result. And of course, it wasn't working. This 5 whys technique to find out the roots of an issue has saved me from many breakup situations. And I also help my friends and my family with this mindset by like asking more whys and relocate and reframe their problem. So here in my example that was from a real experience 2 years ago, instead of that linear problem solution, I set my issue here, reframed my problem as how might I design my work life to make room for creativity. And at last, I decided to reduce my working days to 3 to 4 days a week and to have only one project. However, it made me earn less money, but I am happier and healthier. Okay, the tip three. Tip three is about doing deep interview and divergent converge that is attached to service design. As a client, we saw tons of data, some visible, some hidden, that made us so stressed and confused. Service designers took that mess and turned it into the patterns actually everyone could understand. Later, I realized I needed to get used to the whole this diverge and converge process. That's explore everything without judgment, which is the diverge part, and then find patterns and make sense of the chaos that is a converge. In that diverge phase, service designers run deep interviews with stakeholders and users that so I expected to show my wisest side, someone who knows her job, handles problems, but it went so differently. She was just curious about how I do my job. No one at work had ever asked me those questions in that way that felt that I so safe and without judgment. Even myself, to be honest. That is really skill, and I really needed that because this is also me as a human being. And my mind is full of mess that sometimes all these things jumble together. Pains, questions, honors, assumptions. Here, I truly want to interviewing yourself and calling it research. So, like a dreamy inner service designer, I get curious, jumped in, and start clustering the complexity with deep interview with myself. Then analyze it as we do for businesses and find patterns and priorities. Let me show you how. it makes an impact. With an example, exactly about 10 months ago, I felt so lonely in my career. Actually, I felt lost again. My inner service designer started being curious and empathetic about my situation. Really, I will help you. Yes, you can do it. And I write down all the questions a service designer might ask to explore feelings, context, and my needs. Then I set an appointment with myself and explore with curiosity and actually empathy. And of course, I record the interview. At last, I transcribe it, sort, and reframe the issue. This picture that you cannot read, fortunately, is the result. And it helped me prioritize my problems and understand my resources. One of my main pain was the absence of professional community for sharing experiences and learning together. A gap that made my work journey feel so isolated compared like to other professions. Then I reframed it into a design question that how might I reduce the feeling of isolation with inspire and replace it with inspiration and shared growth. And after 10 months and many activities, that is now I have all of you here. So many friends and such a supportive community. Thanks to you that you are taking your precious time to hear me and I can share what I truly love with you. And I think that it is very cool. Okay, let's jump to the last part, last tip. To me, this last tip is the one that without it, all previous ones might get lost and make me go back to the turtle life. In a client team, I watched designers come and go, gathering tons of data and then presenting their analysis to us. To be honest, sometimes we were a bit skeptical about the outcomes, especially since the duration of the project was long and we had forgotten many details. And we might ask them that, what have you been doing all this time really? Or where did these results suddenly come from? Or when do we finally get to see the big wow? And then they showed their magic on a flight over an infinite whiteboard that I know now that it was Miro. And when we zoomed in, we could discover even more details. This documented and holistic view together was super helpful to find our position whenever a change was happening or we got lost. That's why I have borrowed a habit of documenting of all my service design mindset practices on an infinite whiteboard, just like designers do. I use Figma for this. It all started with the co-creation session I showed in the previous slides, and it is on the top of the board. And for any topic that involves complexity or uncertainty, I create a dedicated board. And on each board, I do whatever I need, co-creation sessions, deep interview, prototyping, anything. Over the past 3 years, I keep most processes here in Figma. Each board, in my experience, can represent something, like it can be a big goal or ambition, like I have a board for starting my own business, or it can be a temporary project, like I made a board for preparing for today's presentation and I was working on it for 2 months. It can be a personal issue, like my therapy sessions or relationship concerts. And I must confess that the longest board is for this one, my relationship concert. It also can be about my worries. Like sometimes I become worried about like finding out a new like source of outcome. I also keep any idea that comes to my mind in that Figma. And I find out if that idea works with like prototyping. For example, I keep a board for running my own business where I can drop relevant thoughts or findings there. And even when I am busy with other projects, it is still there. So by this way, nothing is lost. I can return anytime and I can spot connections like how a small project might lead to a bigger opportunity. In conclusion, let me tell you how all these process and documenting like this has helped me. I am living like this. Okay. Sometimes unexpected things happen. It might be something global like a pandemic or political change, or even something personal sometimes happens, like my health issue or my career shift. These events to understand and then continue in a like new way. But this service design mindset and tips helped me to understand what to do with consuming less time and energy. A very close example around 2 months ago, I experienced a war situation in Iran, in my country. That was the real example of living in VUCA and left me hopeless, kind of like and useless. I was thinking that I haven't done anything. And after the ceasefire, I had to get ready for an interview that was very important for me. I sat on my desk and it took a day or two flying in my Figma. And I found where were I, what I wanted, and what I had done. And at that time, I believed more in how the service design mindset brings hope and brightness when a crisis happens. So I think that is so cool that we all have an inner service designer close to a dreamy client, I mean, ourselves. So these are just suggestions based on my circumstances. And I would love to hear if others already do this in their own way, because I know that maybe all of you do this, and to feel less stressed in this ever changing world. Thank you for taking your time. Curious to hear from you.
Thank you so much, Leili. What an inspiring and lovely way of sharing that, all of that. Especially to me, there is an element that is very strong where you live in a context where sometimes it's quite challenging also, war times, etc. And to hearing that message of hope is very beautiful and how you develop your inner helper. This is something that is truly exemplary. Thank you so much for sharing all of that with us. I see already in the chat that people are saying, I feel the same way too. This resonates so much with me and how my brain works. So I see that there is a big resonance already there. I'd like to open now a bit first a few questions from you guys. And so to warm you up, I will ask obviously the first question so that you have a bit of time to think about your questions because I know you have many. I know that you are someone who is extremely helpful, not just for yourself, but for others. And my question to you is how can this mindset that you have be something of help also for our friends, our family? How do you make that expand to other people?
Actually, I kind of visual thinking has helped me a lot to make the sessions or the talking with people easier for me. Because when they are talking about a very pain that is so deep for themselves, and I draw it like in a very casual and fancy way, it looks like that they feel a bit safer, and it helps them like to share their stuff, and I can help them like by, okay, this is not your problem, maybe it's a solution of the problem that we have to seek it for it. And but how they how I help them, I ask them, I go to them and ask them that, may I help you in the way that I know I do this risk. But the happiness and the reward of it is so big for me, and I think that for them.
That's very beautiful. I hear two tips in it, which are very strong. The first one is to make it visual, make it tangible. And this aspect
Yeah,
of the mess that we have in our head, sometimes
yeah,
just to see it, suddenly it feels much less scary because it's, oh, problem here, solution here. This is linked to this, so I have to start there. Oh, okay. Suddenly it feels much less overwhelming. That's a beautiful thing. And I want to focus here something that you just said, which is this idea of before you help others, ask if it's okay. And I think this is a very beautiful way of saying, hey, I might have a few tips and tricks and strange ways of helping. Is it something that you'd like to? And this is a very beautiful way to engage the conversation because some might say, I'm excited for it. And some might say, no, that's my personal thing. I just want to complain. And that's fully okay too. And that's a beautiful way to create that first interaction. Thanks so much.
You're
Um,
welcome.
I'm going to share a few things from the chat. We have some people saying, I find it absolutely amazing that there's a way to apply service design principles in one's personal life. Someone else suggested, Lady, you definitely should write a book called The Service Designer's Guide to Love and Life. And another comment that comes is thank you so much for this deeply honest and it was deeply honest and I love the way you shared your insights. As a service designer, I found coaching practices and service design work beautiful together and I'm currently exploring the intersections too. So I really enjoyed hearing your perspective on this. And now we have a question from someone who says, is there a service design community in Iran? Is there a community in Iran that people could join? And if not, when will you create it? That's the thing that I add.
Actually, Service Design Pulse is a new community in Iran for Farsi speakers. And the one of the service designers that came to our tourism company run is one of the like co-founders of it. That you see her in the presentation. And but yes, this is just this one. But I think that we need more.
And for people who say, this is a good community, it's beautiful, but I'd like more, what would you recommend to them if they are in an Iranian context and they still say, I long for this community? What would be your suggestion?
I think that Service Design Pulse is the best one that you can text them, and they have also have a page on LinkedIn, and recently they are gathering to make the community stronger. So I think that they will be so happy if a new one joined it.
Wonderful. We have a question from Inka. Inka, please feel free to ask your question.
Hi.
Hi.
First of all, thank you so much. This was so good, great, amazing. I loved it. I wanted to ask because I remember that you said about the things that you had in your head, like what would you like to do? And instead of writing, you like to draw them. Like, how did you come into this realization? Because I always do the writing part, but I think it's like you said, it's somewhat like restricting and takes your like mind to somewhere else. But how did you realize that like drawing it out is better?
Actually, I think that I don't know, but I think that because I'm a visual thinker, but it doesn't mean that I have born with this skill, with this like skill. But I have practiced because I was encouraged for drawing it. I'm drawing doodles. And even in meetings, especially when it is too long, I start drawing to concentrate because words like make me distracted. And sometimes when I start writing about an issue, I get lost in it. And just by experience, I realized that thinking visual can help in this way. And yeah, and if you
Great.
want to practice it, I can suggest that Giovanni Ruello, I think he has he's also a service designer, a professional one, and he runs a drawing gym which are super helpful. It's classes for thinking visual. And he has also created a drawing canvas that with just 6 minutes a day can significantly strengthen your ability to think visually. And I'm really thankful for this from him. Yeah.
Thank you. And thank you for
You're
the tip.
welcome. You're welcome.
Thanks so much for the question. We have another question that comes from the chat, which is beyond using the double diamond framework, are there any other storytelling techniques or methods you like to apply or that you would suggest when it comes to shaping narratives or what's happening in people's life?
I use journey, the way that people, uh, service designers draw journey maps too, because it clusters the steps to reach something. And it is visual. It helps me in the visual way because I can separate that what people are going to see about that, like what I am doing and what I am doing in the blueprint or in downer steps. More than like double diamond, I think that I use this and asking questions and journey mapping a lot in like the boards that you see, that I had many of them.
Thanks so much. In fact, I imagine that I always love this idea of mixing and reusing tools for another purpose. It's like you're using something that works very well in one context and you then bring it in another context. That's a beautiful.
Actually, you have to, in my experience, I customize the tools a lot to adapt my need. For example, in my relationship, in my close relationships, I made a tool because there was like a scene that I remembered from a conflict with my partner, and there was a feeling, there was what we said to each other, and there was what I remembered about that like conversation. So I draw that scene and I write my feeling, my thought, and what I remember from that, and for myself and for him. And we talk about it, and that's how we survive to breakups.
Thank you so much. We have another question. Someone who says, "Hey Leili, I love your presentation, visuals, and application to your personal life. Is there a way you also draw a line between things in your control and outside of your control? I'd be glad to know more about you bridging the gap between the problem and understanding, shortening the time and effort." So as you showed at this at the end, where you said service design helps you to
Yes.
reduce that time of uncertainty. And really the question here is around this notion of how do you show and work with what is something that is in your control and how you work with the stuff that is outside of your control.
Actually, it's a good question because I sometimes I have to separate them, that some stuff are under my control and some stuff aren't. But more than this, I faced to another problem about this issue, that the hardest part is when I notice a certain assumption that my mind treats as reality. It filters everything through it. And when I was like searching for it, I know there are called mental schemas that are like mental shortcuts or frameworks that our brain uses to understand the world. And they help us quickly to interpret situations, but sometimes they make us see things in a fixed way, even if reality is different. And these pre-assumptions make me put me in trouble about like even finding out what are under my control and what are not. So I am really trying, asking for helps like from therapies, from my close ones, to finding ways to understand if this assumption is fixed with reality or not. Yeah, I
Thanks so
don't know
much.
if it was helpful or not.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'll jump to another question. Someone says, I come from a graphic design background and shifted into art direction. And now I'm very new to the field of service design. In my freelance work with agencies, projects usually run on strict timeline where we pitch to clients and move straight into execution with little room for co-creation. In those moments, how can I introduce, encourage, and facilitate co-creation sessions starting from my role in environments that are not familiar with service design, especially in Indonesia, where service design is still relatively new and uncommon? So, how would you motivate people to invest the time in the co-creation before jumping right into the implementation?
Yeah, it is a very good point. Because as a visual thinker, I felt alone. I started searching about this visual thinking and stuff. And I found out about graphic recorders. And I had a session with a graphic recorder to illustrate one of my pain points. And I realized that how much this graphic recording is helpful in co-creation sessions to make this understanding about an issue. And when I search more about this graphic recording, I don't know, in Iran, I don't know that people are doing this. But in like other countries, I have seen, especially in Italy, that they have communities for this, and they practice listening at first, that how the skills of listening, and then make it into the graphic. And it helps a lot in co-creation sessions. And if you can like use it in your work or in co-creation sessions, I think that it really bring energy to that co-creation sessions and bring everyone in one stage.
Thanks so much. I'd like also now maybe to give back to the audience the opportunity to, maybe I'm gonna ask the questions to you all here present. How have you been using your service design skills, professional skills outside of work? I think this is really what I hear also today from Leili, where we know so much from work that we could use in our day-to-day life for relationships, parenting, throwing birthday parties, and even just home renovation. And I'd be curious to hear from all of you if you have also experiences that you'd like to share, tiny tips, tiny ways of doing that. Obviously, as always, you can raise your hand in Zoom or just share something in the chat that I will read out loud.
Yeah, I'm also so curious to not feeling weird that we are the only one using this in our personal life. Please say that you're doing this.
I'll just repeat what I put in the chat, which was a friend of mine. Her daughter couldn't decide what she wanted to wear for Halloween, which in America on Halloween you dress up and go visit houses and get candy. And so she and her daughter like went to the wall and did a mental map and helped her decide what costume she should wear. I thought that was hilarious.
Yeah, thanks so much, Peter, for sharing that. Because I think it's quite beautiful to have kind of this thing where, it can be used by someone who is in a war context, and then someone who's throwing a party or has to think about a costume choice. So that's seeing that nothing is too small or too big is definitely a beautiful learning here. Thanks so much, Peter.
Yeah, and I was talking with an artist yesterday who's working on a piece that takes her photographs and turns them into an outfit, and then how the photograph wraps around the body. They have to like figure out like so the prominent parts of the photograph map to the prominent parts of the body, so the photograph is effectively conveyed even though it's on a dress. And so we're like, you should decide who your primary persona is for the art show. Like, oh yeah, you're welcome. It's designed for the win.
Right.
Yeah.
Really beautiful.
Thank you.
And it's quite beautiful how it gives you also a kind of language for making these absurd things, complicated things, and then suddenly you say, "Oh, but we're gonna just do a prototype about it." And then people look at you and say, "A proto what?" And then it's okay, and then you're giving him a language to deal with the ambiguity. And that's also a very beautiful way to manage that. I'm obviously open to other sharings.
I can share something. I really had to think about it because I think us when we are thinking about these like, everyday life in like design terms and design thinking is so embedded to us that it's maybe hard to say that I'm actually using something like from that in my life. But I do a lot of prototypes from anything and everything, be it just like small things about some like the kids' costume or something like that, but also all of my ideas, all the business ideas that I have, all those kind of things, I make a prototype from that, or that what would like to do in 5 years or something like that. So I make it as a prototype, I make storyboards, sometimes even the desktop models from those. So it's like easier to understand because I'm also like a very visual thinker, but more in terms of I don't get just like pictures, I get moving pictures, which is maybe why it's been hard to translate that because I don't know how to make animations or something like that. So I could actually get the thought out as I'm thinking it. But I will try the drawing gym and try to enhance that.
But there is another community, is Sketchnote School, that they call themselves as the most supportive community on internet. And they are also a good source like to practicing sketchnoting and visual thinking. But about these prototypes, a good, I think that I have done something that it wasn't on my mind, that I spent a lot of time. I used to spend a lot of time on checking my emails, and I was thinking to myself that, hey, you are spending lots of time on checking your emails. You have to like learn a lot of things from them, many articles, many newsletters, and stuff. And it was like becoming kind of bang on my head that you are like lazy, you cannot learn from and stuff. So I started a prototype to the board and learning from emails. And for 2 weeks, I start writing down and putting all my learnings from emails on that board. And after 2 weeks, I filtered my email box. That okay, I had just have more focus on it, and the other, some of them was just for have a very short look at their titles. And that's like my head stopped with that prototype, and I feel free, and I even spend less time on checking my email now. So I think that prototype thing is really helpful, and it free your mind a lot of time.
Absolutely. Thanks so much. We have another example that is shared in the chat. Someone that says that this approach reminds her of how a personal stylist who is choosing clothes starts with the jobs to be done, and which makes a lot of sense. So not just thinking about what will fit, but what is the job that is given to the specific clothes for the specific occasion. And so that's a beautiful framework also to then bring that back to something very concrete and very specific. Beautiful. I'd like to mention maybe another webinar we did, I think 1 year ago, which was about prototyping for life, which was quite an interesting thing, which happened at the Swiss Service Design Day 2024, if I remember well. And it was with Maria. I will leave then the link in the chat and in the description, but also quite an interesting approach where she has a focus on how you prototype new lifestyles, new ways of working, new ways of living. So it's a lot about around the idea of prototyping, but I think it matches quite well also what we are speaking about today. Now I imagine a few people will be like, oh, this is interesting. This is already helpful. You gave me the sketchnote community, the thing from Giovanni. Are there other resources that you gathered along the way where you say, this is something that can be used to help you develop your inner service designer?
Okay. Yes. I think Daniela's website is one of the best resources for not learning service design in like small, easy to digest lessons written in simple language, but also he has also shared a series of videos about how service design applies to everyday life, which are really interesting. And I suggest all of you to check. But yeah, and I haven't found that much source about this topic. Just there was a guy that Will Burnett, I think. I saw a video on YouTube. It was, I think, a TED Talk, and he is executive director of the Life Design Lab at Stanford University. And he talked about how design thinking can help design your life. But I haven't read his book or searched more about it, but I think that he can also be another source.
Thank you so much. So I will put the link to Designing Your Life and also in the descriptions from this event. And as you mentioned, but it wasn't the goal, I will also mention the course, the tiny course around the everyday.
Thank you. I use your website like a chat GPT, like an AI. I just search for words and everything that I need comes in very like short and to the point sentences. Thank you.
Really appreciate to be the chat GPT of someone else. That's really cool. Thanks so much. Which brings me to the closure of kind of the official and recorded moment. We will then transition in a few minutes to a moment which is a bit of a more community hangout moment where nothing is recorded. For those who want to stay a little bit longer, then we have a bit of a more informal conversation. So for those who want to stay, feel free to stay a little bit longer after. We always appreciate that. And for those who have a family to attend to, a sandwich to attend to, or a Disney show to attend to, and that's fully okay too. Enjoy all of these things. But for now, I wanted to say a big thank you to you, Leili. You gave a lot to the community today. You gave a lot of insights. You gave a lot of time. What can people give you back? What can people do for you if they reached this moment?
Oh, sharing your service design practices, or if you had done the same thing, and it can be very helpful for others. I mean that even if I try other ways, I will share it on internet and LinkedIn, because it was so helpful for me. It's really helped me to be less nervous. So I really want you to share your experiences as well. Thanks to you. And thank you, Daniela, for the lovely facilitation. And I am so proud to be part of this community. And also, I truly appreciate all of you for joining, and even more for sticking with it despite not knowing exactly what this would be about. I hope you have enjoyed too.
I really appreciate all what you shared today. I also personally appreciate from the Swiss Service Design Network side all the involvement that you have with the community. It's a true pleasure to always see you in those events and to be such an active participant in those events, and that it's something that I truly appreciate. Thanks so much to you, Leili. Thank you so much to everyone who has joined.